Creating a podcast is so much more than just putting your content out there. You can make an actual impact with your show. And today we talk with Julie all about that and how she is using her podcast to be an advocate for pets. And that might seem like, well, what do you mean be an advocate for pets? Stay tuned. This is a good one. I love this idea of the ways that we can use our podcast beyond just, all right, we're growing our business or we're trying to make a difference in the world. How can we really highlight the people who are doing real advocacy work and also be an advocate in our own right and also be making that difference, even if it's just one person that takes action to make a different decision that is better for the world at large? That is a goal. And that is something that is achievable for us if we are wanting to use our podcast to make that impact. Please also note that Julie does talk about the death of a pet in this episode. So that's a quick content warning, as well as some of the realities that happen in pet shelters. So if that is something that is triggering for you, then please take care of your mental health and maybe listen to the first half of this episode and skip the other half if that's something that is triggering for you. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. All right, please join me in welcoming Julie to the podcast. Welcome to Podcasting Unlocked, the show for purpose-driven podcasters. I'm Alicia Galati, founder of Galati Media, and I'm here to share actionable strategies to help you amplify your message and grow your audience. Hello, Julie. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. If you could start by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and a bit about your show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I am Julie Marty Pearson. I am a podcaster, speaker, and coach. I have two podcasts. The first is The Story of My Pet, and the second is Podcast Your Story. And The Story of My Pet has become my passion project, all about advocating and educating for animal rescue, fostering, and adoption. And Podcast Your Story is all about empowering more women like us to share their stories through podcasting.
So what got you into podcasting? Two podcasts is not for the weak, right? It really is not. There's so much that goes into it.
And I will say I take the route of, yes, consistency is best, but life is life. And sometimes we have to pause and we have to take a break and we have to put something else in front of the podcast. So before COVID, I worked in higher ed. I taught psychology and statistics and worked in a lot of research areas and did accreditation work. So, that was my whole career. But I was actually unemployed when COVID hit because I had to have surgery. And so it was my space to stop and breathe and be like, what do I want my life to be now? And I think a lot of us had those moments. So I always wanted to coach. I have a doctorate in organizational psychology, and we had a class on how to be a good coach and how to coach people. And I love that part of psychology. So I said, well, I guess now's the time to start my coaching business because I can do it virtually. And so I started with career coaching. Obviously, that's what I knew. And I was taking all the classes, all the business things, learning. And I took a podcast class. And I met a lot of great women in the class with me. And so I started working on a podcast around career coaching. And it never went anywhere because I was not excited to talk about resumes.
Yep.
So I thought to myself, what is something I can talk about with no preparation any day of the week? And that's pets. If you're watching the video version of this, you'll see all the animal photos behind me. I've always been an animal lover. Pets have always been a very important part of my life. I don't have human kids. We only have fur kids. And we also have some tortoises. So I decided, let's just try it and see if I even like it. I was new to podcasting both as a listener and as thinking about doing it. So I got on Zoom with friends and we talked about our pets and we laughed and we had dogs barking and interrupting us. And I put the episodes out unedited. I learned how to add an intro and all the little things, but I put it out and slowly people started listening and slowly people started asking to be on the podcast. And that was really a pivotal moment for me because I was doing it to see what it was, how to do it, if I liked it. And then when people started asking to be on it was like, oh, okay. And then I started meeting all these incredible people, but a lot of incredible women who, like me, were in midlife, 30s, 40s or up, no human kids, love our pets, and we want to help more animals. And so I started learning more about animal rescue work, how animal shelters work, nonprofits that support that. And so that's really where podcasting kind of expanded my world and allowed me to connect with people on an even deeper level and something I've always been passionate about. But I also realized I didn't know as much as I thought I knew.
Yeah, I feel like you can learn so much from podcasting and it can really shift, especially as a host and like talking to people and like being able to have that one-on-one conversation. Yes, listening in, you can have your worldview shifted, but I feel like conversing and being the one behind the mic and talking to these other people can really shift how you think or how you view things and give you a different perspective. So that's so incredible.
Absolutely. I love the interview process. Like, that's the easy part for me. Being in psychology, I was taught, like, undergrad how to do interviews, how to run focus groups, how to paraphrase, and all those tools that interviewers use. So it's kind of innately who I am. So I don't really even do a lot of prep. I just get on and let's go. Where's this conversation going to take us today? So the harder part for me has been talking about myself and doing solo episodes because in my old life, I was a teacher. I was a speaker. I had to present research and information, but none of that was ever really about me. It wasn't me telling my story. And so the evolution for me in podcasting has coming out of my shell, showing myself fully, but also sharing my stories because I've realized how impactful that is.
Yes, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday. They'd booked a consult call and we're like, should I keep doing this? And their podcast. And like during the conversation, I was like, in the middle, she's talking about the work she does and how she just wants to be there and support moms and let them know like they're not alone and they have so much that's going on and they are doing so freaking good with what they're doing. Like her passion was like coming through so well in just talking about her work, and I was like, "That right
Yeah.
there." Like, just think about the person that you wanna be talking to and what you want them to know today about the thing that you're talking about, and I think that it's so important because so often podcast listeners come for maybe a guest, right? They might show up for a guest, but they
Right.
stay for the host. They stay for you. They can listen to that person on 15 other podcasts, but they are there to hear what you have to say and your ads to it or your solo episodes. And so I think that, like, if you're listening to this, please do some solo episodes because I am telling you right now, they are going to be some of your best content, your best downloaded episodes. They're going to be the episodes that get you DMs and like people being like, oh my gosh, me too, right? Like that
Right.
is the impact that you can make. And those solo episodes are so important for that.
Yes, it's funny. I get asked lots of different questions about podcasting, guesting, launching, growing. But a lot of people say, so should I do interviews or solos or this or that? And it's like, well, it's not this or that. You get to do all of it. You get to do whatever you want to do. And I obviously lean into the interview because I love that part and I love sharing other people's stories. But I have to push myself, especially with my podcast about podcasting. Like it's my business. So I have to talk about what I do for people and how I help you and how I've learned. I think that's what I love about podcasting is like for me, I've stayed because I'm passionate about what I talk about. I love the process of meeting people and interviewing people, but it's also pushed me out of my comfort zone to do other things and to talk alone and talk about my story and talk about teaching other people how to do what I'm doing. This is what I learned, so don't make the same mistake. Whatever it is, like that solo episode is really important. And I heard someone speak at a conference earlier this year and he said, you don't need sponsors. You don't need to worry about all that. You're the sponsor. Your business is the sponsor. You are the ad. Like use your platform for that. That's the point of having it.
Yes. Yeah. If you're a business owner, please and thank you. Sponsor your own podcast, please. I was talking to a client this morning. We had a strategy session. She's like, I want to revisit this monetization thing. And I was like, cool. When was the last time you told people about your one-on-one services? She was like, yeah, about that. And I was like, all right, so that's the next step. There we go. That and then
Right.
let's work on some dynamic content when you can have with Buzzsprout. That's what we use as our podcast hosting platform of choice. You can have up to 3 mid rolls, right? So do your freebie,
Right.
your low ticket offer, and your high ticket offer. There you go. It'll filter through them and then people will
Right.
know what you do.
I use Buzzsprout too. Shout out Buzzsprout.
Yeah.
They're great. I love them. So easy to use, but also gives us lots of great benefits. I think that we get tied up in the production and who we're having and what it looks like and the cover art. There's all the things you can get in your head about. But like you said, this is your business. You should be promoting it. It's okay. We all have free stuff we can offer people. And if you don't, you need to. That's something to talk about or add in a mid roll into your podcast episode. And it doesn't feel salesy because you're just saying, hey, come to my networking event or hey, come to my next free workshop. Because I heard recently someone say that a marketing person told them that people on average consume 10 hours of your content before they purchase anything. Like, that's a lot. You need to be giving people enough stuff for free on your podcast that makes them want to do more with you.
And also stop infantilizing the people that we are selling to, right? I think that's something that maybe it's just as women, we tend to be like, no, it's okay. I don't have to like sell to them or I don't have to tell them about my thing. But it's like, one, you're doing them a disservice. You're not forcing anyone to do anything by inviting them to take part in what you have. And so I think that one, stop infantilizing our buyers and let them know what we've got and that you have these things available, simply guiding them, and then they can decide. They have free
Right.
will to decide if they want to work with you or not.
Right. And I've also had to come to terms with realizing not everybody is right for everyone,
Right.
right? I may
Yeah.
not be the right coach for you, whether you're a guest or a host or whatever you want to do. But I also am cultivating a network of people I know that I can say, oh, well, then go to here. They can help you with that. Or like one thing I use as an example is YouTube. Yes, I'm on YouTube. Yes, I have a channel. Yes, I put my episodes there, but I do not understand YouTube. I do not understand the algorithm. So, what do? I have a great AI that tells me good tags and good titles for my YouTube version versus my audio. And so, sometimes we just have to realize that maybe I'm not the one to support you, but what you're doing is important. Let me send you to my friend or let me point you to this person because you're really going to get what you need there.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I like collaborating with other podcast producers and podcast strategists because one, you're not competition. We are collaborators because I know that there are going to be people who are not going to be good for me. And that's okay, especially if they're type A, because I'm type A. Those don't work well. I need someone who just like is like, I recorded it, now have fun, do the rest. And I'm like,
Right.
yes, thank you. This is my favorite thing to do. Right? Like that's what I want. And people who listen when I tell them what to do. That also is really important. And so I can send them to someone else who's like, oh no, I just take direction. And that's okay. There's room for all of us in this
Yes,
space for sure.
absolutely.
So let's get back to your pet podcast and talking about this idea of using your podcast as a tool of advocacy. You mentioned a little bit about this before, but give me a little more of how you're using it in this way.
So, what I kind of learned quickly was I always considered myself an animal advocate, and I am. But, it was what I learned from my own experience or following some accounts. Cats built the internet. We can all agree on
Yep.
that. So, way back in like 2016, I had an Instagram account for my cat. And I had a lot of followers. We all followed each other. But in that mix was a lot of people who were fostering and rescuing and doing things for kittens and cats. That's how I learned was through watching them and them sharing. So I thought I knew it, but I really didn't know the expansiveness of it. So having people who work in shelters come on talking about what they do and what they need help with, having people who run rescues, having people who do TNR, all the things I was learning from my guests. I became more involved. I started volunteering. I fostered. I even worked at one of the shelters in my area part time for a while. And all of that showed me the reality of what these people do every single day. They are true heroes. Shelter workers get a lot of bad raps. They literally live and breathe this work. They do it every day. They foster at home. They're coming in and volunteering their time. I mean, it really showed me wow, this is this, it's not just a rescue or adopt or all these terms that fly around. This is their life. This is what they're dedicated. And I quickly realized I did not have the capacity to be in it every day. It literally broke my heart. My blood pressure went up. and it wouldn't come down. And my doctor's like, this is not good for you. And so sometimes we have to find our place in helping.
Right.
And so what I realized was I was building a platform to be my place to help. And that by having people who rescue and run rescues and do nonprofit work and work in the shelter come in and talk about it and give their experience, that was my way of serving and helping animals. I say if someone listens to my podcast and decides to adopt instead of buy from a breeder, that's like a win for me. And so when I say advocacy, I want people to think about that in different ways. We can advocate for something that is important to us, that we're passionate about, without it having to be on the front line of the protest. We can all do it in our own way. And so the story of my pet has become my way, and I'm really proud of it. It's been out for over 3 years, and it's a top 5% podcast, but it's small. Like, our downloads are not huge. And I've gotten to the point where I don't expect that. But what I look at is when I get the emails that say I'm charting, like I was charting in Pakistan at one point. I was charting in India, like all of these countries that have all their own animal rights issues. And so for me, that's where I realize my advocacy is coming in, is helping educate people about something they didn't know. Because if I was learning something, the people who know nothing about animal rescue were really going to learn something. And so that's kind of how I've built it from the advocacy perspective, is sharing stories, sharing my own experience, but not doing it in a judgmental way, not talking down to people. Like having someone come on and talk about the evolution of how they went from their old career into full-time animal rescue is inspiring. And you're going to get pieces of that help people realize, oh, I could just go volunteer a few hours and that would make a difference. And it will. So that's really how I've kind of built it in terms of advocacy. And I'm just learning and growing as I go. And I continue to learn and get inspired by my guests because of that.
And I think that there's like this balance, right, that you can find as a host when you're deciding what kinds of guests you want to have on, what kind of impact that you want to have. So I have a few different podcasts that I've hosted myself over the years. And I've had everything from having people on to share their expertise to having more
Mhm.
collaborative conversations where it's like, we're going to be focusing on you as the guest, but it's going to be both of us in conversation. And those ones
Right.
are more like hobby podcasts, right? Or ones like this where, it is like, yes, we're highlighting you and I'm going to give my anecdotes and my expertise as well, because the people that I have on are podcasters. And just like hearing this of like, okay, this is why this works. And so it's really just about finding the balance that's going to work for you with
Right.
achieving the goal it is that you're trying to achieve with your podcast. And it sounds like you were very clear on like, no, this is going to be to make an impact. This is my goal. The downloads don't matter. It's about the impact that we're making. And I think that we get lost in that sometimes of like,
Yep.
oh, well, I wanted impact, but like, I also want this other thing. It's like, well, which do you want? like sometimes you have to decide.
Right. And when I started my pet podcast, I definitely had misconceptions about what podcasting was and how it would grow and how it would monetize. And I have come to the point where I know this is my passion project and I can put it on the shelf for a while if I need to, if I have other things I have to focus on, but I can still come back to it and people still listen. So that was powerful for me. But I had to let go of the monetization because I had tried so many different things. It just didn't work. So ultimately, I've slowly found one in particular company that I'm an affiliate for that I trust and I believe in. And people like it when I do a host read ad about it. And it happens to be a CBD company. And I use the CBD myself every day, but I also use it on my pets. So it's a good connection there. And I had one of my guests came on who I actually learned about the company through, and she talked about it, how she uses it with her donkey and her horses and her ducks and all these. She was giving this brand new perspective. And it's not making a lot of money, but if it covers the cost of Buzzsprout for the month or whatever else I'm using, then I feel like, yes, I can be advocating without it being this really big money maker, because that's not what it was at any point. And so I stopped really being like, oh, I want that guest because they're famous or people know them, because that's not really what it is. It's the content, it's the connection. And so I have really found I can give a sense from meeting someone or learning about them who's going to be a good fit for that. And that's also a power we have as podcasters. Like you said, we get to decide who we want on our podcast. Like, this is our blood, sweat, and tears, our time and money. We get to decide, and just because publishing companies reach out to me to have their author's new book talked about, some of those have been good, but some of them have not been good interviews. And I'm just like, yeah, I can't go down that road because it's not authentic to me and what I want to do with the podcast. I also want to say to people, especially women podcasters, it's your power that you have to own, that you get to make decisions about your own podcast.
Yes. I like to think of my listeners as my kids, right? Like, I will protect you with my life. And so I'm not going to have people in this space who are not going to give value. And I think that if we think about our listeners like that, not as like, no, I need a cha-ching every time that someone new comes on, or I need to expand this audience massively, which, pro tip, big guests do not equal big downloads. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Big guests do not equal big downloads. It is usually that they are either on some type of book tour, or they're on 15 other podcasts in that month,
Yep.
and their audience is inundated with those episodes. They don't get the same airtime as that person who has a smaller but very diehard audience
Right.
and fan base. Those are the episodes that end up doing so much better than the big names. Yes, you can get the big names if you're looking for a little bit of credibility or pat on the back, or
Right.
these people were on the show, right? That's cool. But go into it knowing that that's what you're going to get, and it's not going to be a lot of downloads. So yeah, those misconceptions are just, you learn them the hard way.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I talk about, when I talk to women about starting a podcast, whether it's about a passion project or your business, it's the same thing. You have to start with your why, and you have to start with realistic expectations of
Yeah.
what's going to happen and how quickly it's going to happen. Because trust me, you can set yourself up for failure very easily in podcasting. I've been there. I've been like, why are these not going up? Like, well, looking at your downloads every day is not going to help anybody.
Not at all. Yes. There's so many strategies that go into increasing downloads and all that. We've got episodes for that. Y'all
Right.
can go find them. There's tons.
Yeah. So I would say from an advocacy perspective, and really both of my podcasts have become that, because my other one is about women's voices and stories. And so my interviews are with women podcasters talking about why they chose podcasting. How has having a podcast changed their life? Because every woman I meet has their podcast has changed their life in some way.
Yeah.
And so I'm still advocating with that, because I'm advocating for other women listening to do it too, to be a guest, to start your own, do whatever it is you've been waiting to do, write the book, do the thing. Because I've been that woman before. I still am. I still question myself. I still say, why am I doing this? And you don't want to chase the big names, because like you said, they're already 10 places. Like, for an example, I love Michelle Obama. I have seen her on so many different podcasts recently that it's like, that's a little saturation, right? That's
Mhm.
not really making each one powerful and unique. So for me, really, it is about the connection with your guests and really just being in the moment with them, talking about what they do or what they're sharing. I have had who I consider bigger guests on, but I think it's more about the credibility.
Right.
I have someone who came on who's a true crime podcaster. And since I interviewed her, she's blown up. I mean, she's doing all these other big things with Spotify and LA Times. And so even though I don't know, that doesn't mean I'm going to get huge downloads for her episode. It means people who'd listen, there is an aspect of credibility for me as a podcaster because I had her on my show.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just going into it with your eyes wide open, right? That
Yes.
that's really what it is. And really being clear, like you said, okay, I want this to show to achieve this. I want to be an advocate. I want to be able to, even if it's just convincing one person every month to, instead of going and buying from a breeder, going and getting your pet from a shelter or adopting, and as someone who has adopted, like a pet, that is such a big way to make a difference in a pet's life,
Yep.
and can quite frankly mean life or death, right? For that pet.
Right. Absolutely. And one thing I always like to say, which I see shared in the animal world all the time, is you may not change the world by adopting a pet, but you're going to change the entire world for that pet. Like, that's a powerful statement. And one of the things I also have done, I haven't done it as much recently, but on my podcast, my solo episodes are me talking about my experience, like my childhood dogs and how important they were. My first foster kitten, who unfortunately passed away in my arms.
Mm.
It's very, very traumatic. I will say animal rescue work is not easy, but the day I finally was able to walk back in the shelter and return the carrier he came home in, they had just gotten in a litter of 6 kittens without a mom that were 2 weeks old, could not survive on their own, and shelters, many of them are not legally allowed to keep kittens that age because they're not open 24/7,
Mm.
and kittens get euthanized, and it's heartbreaking and sad, but there aren't enough people, there aren't enough homes, all the things. So, I brought home a litter of 6 kittens, and that pretty much became my full-time job for 6 weeks. At the time, I could do it, and it worked out. And let me tell you, bottle feeding 6 kittens, by the time you get to number 6, number 1's hungry again.
Yep. I can imagine.
But it was a very healing experience for me. Like, I couldn't save the one I got first. Little Binks just wasn't strong enough to make it. He had had too hard of a life early on. But I showed him love for that little life he had, and he became our family, and we buried him in our backyard. So that was very transformative for me to realize the ways we can help, even if it doesn't mean having a healthy pet for a long time. And so that little litter of 6 kittens was so much joy, so much entertainment. By the time they were 8 weeks, my husband looked at me one day and goes, "I think it's time for them to go back to the shelter." And they did, and they all got adopted, and one of them, a beautiful little calico who I bonded with pretty quickly in that group, Pumpkin, became the youngest member of our fur family. And she entertains us and gives us joy and love every day. So I shared those stories because that's like the power of storytelling, but it's also the power of saying, if I hadn't started my podcast, I wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have
Yeah.
Pumpkin. I wouldn't have had these experiences, and I wouldn't be able to share them so other people say, hey, maybe I could foster too.
I love it. That's so powerful. I think we can make such a difference. And like you said, we don't have to change the world, and we don't have to have thousands of listeners to make that impact. It's just those few people that reach out and are like, because of you, I did this thing that I didn't think I could, right? That's what
Right.
this is for.
And, I've also found the power in lifting up my guests. I have an interview I haven't released yet, but it's with the man that I met on Podmatch. Shout out, love Podmatch, both as a host and a guest. And, we connected because one of the tags in his profile was cats or animals. But, we got on his Zoom. He goes, I'm not really sure I'm the right fit for your podcast. I'm like, well, let's get to know each other. So he talked about how he wrote an autobiography about his life because he worked in elections back in 2020 during the pandemic. Like, oh, I can imagine the stories you have to tell. But he said, well, yeah, but I have a chapter all about my cats and how my cat saved my life. And I'm like, okay, that's what
There's
it
your
is.
story.
And so our whole interview is him talking about why he first got cats, why he loves cats, and then talked about like his mental health journey and how he was suicidal and how knowing that no one would be there to take care of his beloved cats is part of what kept him on this earth. And I'm like, that is what it's about. Because a lot of us are lonely, a lot of us are depressed and sad and anxious. The world is kind of a dumpster fire, but that doesn't mean we have to give into it. That doesn't mean we can't bring joy and do new things and try new things. But I'm also a big advocate for people having pets because, they help us so much with our mental health, with our physical health. I've had a lot of health issues throughout my life, and having a pet next to me when I don't feel great, you just can't, there's nothing can replace that. Maybe that's what I need is someone else to take care of. And in return, as we always say, who rescued who? Did you rescue them or did they rescue you? So
I love it. It's so good. Julie, this has been just so much fun. If people are like, okay, yes, I need more Julie, please and thank you. Where can they find you, get to know you, all your things?
Well, I always like to say I'm in all the places, but the easiest way is simply go to my website, juliemartypearson.com, and you can find both my podcasts. You can find all of my events and things, as well as I do monthly networking events and I offer free workshops. So, whatever you're looking for in podcasting or to learn more about advocacy, check out my website and you'll see all of it.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we have links for that in the show notes and the YouTube description as well. So if you're doing other things while listening, we've got you. Just check the show notes for those links and you'll be able to go and hang out with Julie. Julie, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.